Krishna, everyone. Welcome back. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pashtata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, as we promised in our last lecture, we're going to continue discussing the glories of the great Syamananda Pandit. This is a Syamananda Pandit part 2. And as we did in the first lecture on him, we'll begin with a few verses from Syamananda Shataka by his foremost disciple, Rasikananda, glorifying in a very beautiful way Sri Syamananda Pandit. So, and I quote, I offer my respectful obeisances to Krishnananda's son, Sri Syamananda. He is a great devotee of Lord Krishna. In this world he gives the nectar of Lord Krishna. His form is filled with spiritual bliss. He is delighted by hearing Lord Krishna's glorious pastimes. He is worshipped by the king of the demigods. The touch of his glorious feet brings a great festival of bliss to the affectionate goddess of this earth. By preaching the Lord's glories, he has created devotees of Lord Krishna in every direction. I offer my respectful obeisances to Krishnananda's son, Sri Syamananda. Filled with the news of Lord Krishna, his graceful words delight the wise. His auspicious pastimes make the three worlds fall in love with Lord Krishna. His smile breaks apart the darkness that blinds the materialists. His glance is sweet with mercy. I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Syamananda, who, hearing of Lord Krishna's sweet rasa dance festival with the gopis, became filled with ecstatic love, began to dance, and then fell unconscious as he danced, and who then manifested the ecstatic symptoms of trembling, being stunned, speaking words in a choked voice, perspiring, weeping, becoming pale, and having a body with hair standing erect, and who was at every moment overcome with ecstatic love, and who taught others also how to become overcome with ecstatic love. We are indebted to Rasikananda for such sweet and enlightening words about the personality of Syamananda Pandit. So, as you may well remember from our last lecture, after Srimati Radharani, Lalita Devi, and Vishaka bestowed their mercy on Kanaka Manjari, meaning Syamananda Pandit's form as a Brajagopi, they all disappeared from Sevakunj. And then Kanaka Manjari then assumed her form as Dukhi Krishnadas in this world, and he woke up in Sevakunj, dressed in very simple sadhu attire, but a lot had changed. Because by the touch of Srimati Radharani's divine anklet, you remember his iron spade had turned to gold. On his forehead was the Sham Mohan Tilak, and on his chest was written Syamananda. And on his head, he was carrying the divine deity of Shamsundar, who had manifest from the very heart of Srimati Radharani. So it's described he was, overwhelmed with love of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, and he was shedding tears, and he quickly left the Kunj and ran to his Shiksha Guru, Srila Jiva Goswami's Bhajan Kutir. And when it's written that when Jiva Goswami saw him, he was like astonished, struck with wonder. And he said to Dukhi Krishnadas, "Oh, Dukhi Krishnadas, where have you been all this time? How has your fair complexion changed into this extraordinary golden complexion? What is this golden spade, the mark on your forehead, and the name glowing upon your chest? Today it seems you have been blessed either by Sri Krishna or by the daughter of King Brishabhanu, Srimati Radharani. Now Tell me the truth. So then Syamananda Pandit, then took Jiva Goswami to a secluded place, and in a choked voice, he narrated the whole confidential pastime. And hearing how Srimati Radharani had bestowed this extraordinary mercy on Syamananda, Srila Jiva Goswami, who's always described as like very sober, he couldn't check himself, and he became mad with joy. And he started dancing wildly as tears of love flowed from his eyes. And then he embraced Dukhi Krishnadas very tightly, and he spoke the following words with a faltering voice. My dear Dukhi Krishnadas, you are the most blessed in all the three worlds. For up to the present day, Srimati Radharani has not directly shown such mercy to anyone else. As you have received the direct mercy of the daughter of King Brishabhanu, by touching your body, today I have also become blessed. From now on, you will be known amongst the Vaishnavas by the name given to you by Sri Radha, Syamananda. And the Sham Mohan Tilak will be known as Syamanandi Tilak. And this transcendental divine deity, the life and soul of Srimati Radharani, and her supreme mercy personified, will be like a desire-fulfilling tree for the welfare of the whole world, and will be known by the name Shyamasundar. By giving his darshan to the inhabitants of this world, he will deliver them all. Srila Jiva Goswami ki. So then, Syamananda, he became fully absorbed in serving the deity of Shyamasundar. Now it's very significant that Srimati Radharani gave this specific deity to Syamananda. For Shyamasundar is described in Shastra as the, quote, the supreme form, unquote. How do we know? We know from reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Therein, in Madhya Lila, Lord Chaitanya asks his devotee, Raghupati Upadhyaya, 4 questions. 1, he asks, who is the foremost being? Of all of Krishna's abodes, which do you think is best? And of the 3 ages of Krishna known as childhood, boyhood, and fresh youth, which do you consider superior? And number 4, amongst all the mellows, or the rasas in devotional service, which do you consider the highest? So Raghupati Upadhyaya, he replied, Shwayam eva param rupam puri maru puri vara vaya kashor akam jayam adya eva paro rasha. Quote, the form of Shyamasundar is the supreme form. The city of Mathura, Vrindavan, is the supreme abode. Lord Krishna's fresh youth, Kashor, should always be meditated upon, and the mellow of conjugal love is the supreme mellow. Perfect questions, perfect answers. So therein he said that the form of Shyamasundar is the supreme form. Mahaprabhu wanted to know. So the supreme, the form of Shyamasundar is the supreme form. And in the Krishna book, we hear the demigods glorifying Shyamasundar. They say very beautifully, ever fresh and always youthful, your transcendental form is the ultimate expression of beauty and sweetness. And because it resembles the hue of a new rain cloud, you are known as Shyamasundar. So this is the name of the deity that manifested from the heart of Srimati Radharani and is being worshipped here by Syamananda. So one day, Jiva Goswami came to see Syamananda and told him that in memory of the divine mercy that he'd received from Srimati Radharani, he, Jiva Goswami, planned to establish a marble altar on the exact sacred spot where the anklet was found. I haven't been to Sevakunj in many, many years, so I don't know if that marble altar is still there or not, or there's something there to mark that particular spot. I'm sure there is. So you can imagine news of Shyamananda's new fame spread very quickly throughout Vrindavan. And one day some pilgrims who'd come from Bengal, who come from Navadvip, they heard this news, this good news of this amazing pastime. But upon returning to Navadvip, unfortunately they misinformed the guru of Dukhi Krishna Das, Syamananda, Hridaya Chaitanya. They told Hridaya Chaitanya that quote, Dukhi Krishna Das has rejected you as his guru, and he's adopted a new name, Syamananda. And not only that, they said he's wearing a new tilak. Everyone's calling Syamanandi. And hearing this unfortunate news about his dear disciple, Hridaya Chaitanya was very disturbed. Actually, he was deeply hurt. So he left for Vrindavan immediately to inquire what had transpired. And he was accompanied by, 64 Mahantas, 12 senior cowherd men, and other distinguished Vaishnavas. And after a long journey, when they reached Vrindavan, he immediately held an assembly of many Vaishnavas in the presence of Syamananda to decide what action he might have to take against him. And at the beginning of the meeting, Hridaya Chaitanya asked Syamananda why he had, quote, given up his guru and adopted a new name and new tilak. So Syamananda very humbly replied that it was only by his guru, by Hridaya Chaitanya's mercy that he'd received these blessings, because everything comes by the blessings of guru. So he said, I've received this new name and this new tilak by your mercy. So at this point, the Leela is that Hridaya Chaitanya became very angry. And he said, quote, I am going to wash off the tilak on your forehead and the name on your chest, and only if they reappear will I accept that they were obtained by Sri Radha's mercy. If they don't reappear, you will be punished for misbehaving and speaking lies. So then Hridaya Chaitanya, he took a cloth, it's described quite a rough cloth, and with some dust and some water, and he washed off that new tilak, adorning the forehead of Dukhi Krishna Das, as he knew him, as well as the name Syamananda on his chest. So then in a very humble mood, Syamananda turned to his Guru Maharaj and the assembled devotees, and he asked them to give him 48 minutes. Just give me 48 minutes. They said, well, yeah, sure. And he started to chant the Radha mantra that Lalita Saki had previously given him. Remember, in that our other class, he'd been given a mantra before he went to meet Srimati Radharani to qualify him to meet her. So he began chanting that Radha mantra, Radharani mantra. And as soon as he chanted the mantra, he entered into that unmanifested eternal abode of Vrindavan again. There's the manifest and there's the unmanifest. They're both. So he entered into the unmanifest eternal abode of Vrindavan, where Krishna's pastimes are taking place even today. And he assumed his Manjari form as Kanaka Manjari. And accompanied again by Lalita Saki, he was given darshan of Srimati Radharani. And he explained this situation, what's going on. So Srimati Radharani smiled and assured Syamananda that she would arrange for his protection. He didn't have to worry. Then she said something mysterious to him. She said, Gadadhar Pandit, the guru of your guru, is the cowherd boy Shubal Shaka, who assists myself and Krishna in our pastimes in Vrindavan forest. You just remember this. In other words, the guru of Hridaya Chaitanya is Gadadhar Pandit. So you remember that. So moments later, Syamananda found himself back with his guru in the assembly of devotees, and it's written that by the unlimited mercy of Srimati Radharani, the name Syamananda appeared back on his chest, and the tilak appeared on his forehead. Even brighter than before, it's written, even brighter than before. So seeing this miracle, the 64 Mahants and the 12 senior cowherd men and all the respected Vaishnavas present, they exclaimed, Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Sri Radhe. And his guru, Syamananda's guru, Hridaya Chaitanya, he was also pacified by this miraculous event. So then, accompanied by Syamananda and all the other devotees, Hridaya Chaitanya left to do parikrama around Vrindavan. And eventually the parikrama party came to the holy site of Shanket. We've described Shanket before previously. And when they arrived at that most sacred place, there was a theater group performing rasa dance. As you see it all the time, certain parts of the year, you'll see that the Brajabasis, they reenact the Rasa Leela in different places like this as a source of great inspiration. And one actor was playing Krishna, and he danced at the center, and other actors representing gopis, they danced very artistically around him. And other gopis, they were singing, and still more were playing musical instruments. A beautiful enactment of the rasa dance. And Syamananda Pandit was like captivated by this Rasa Leela performance. And he became so absorbed in watching it that at one point he fell to the ground unconscious. And when he woke up, he started rolling in the dust. Started rolling in the dust again, calling out the names of Radha and Krishna. And then absorbed, obviously, in the identity of a gopi, he placed a cloth over his head, and he danced madly alongside the other performance. It's described drenching his clothes and his body with tears that streamed down from his eyes. It's just watching this theater. And at this site of this very lively display of Gopi Bhav, Hridaya Chaitanya, who we heard earlier, remember, was in the mood of Sakyaras, friendship with Krishna. We mentioned that in the previous lecture. Hridaya Chaitanya also, Hridaya Chaitanya was in the mood of Sakyaras, friendship with Krishna. So he became upset. Without saying a word, he just left the performance, and he was thinking, Syamananda is a maidservant of Sri Radha who has no place in my circle of cowherd boys. So the next morning, when Syamananda offered obeisances to Hridaya Chaitanya, his guru burst out. He said, quote, since you have rejected the devotional mood which you can receive from me, meaning Sakyaras, as a cowherd boy, you should leave my presence. So suddenly remembering the words of Srimati Radharani, Syamananda humbly replied, my dear spiritual master, your very own guru, Gadadhar Pandit, we all know to be the cowherd boy Shubal, in the eternal Leelas in Goloka Vrindavan. And he always helps Krishna meet Srimati Radharani. And when they meet, he engages in service to them within the kunja. So he's a cowherd boy, but he's also engaged in these Madhurya Rasa pastimes, assisting Radha and Krishna. So Hridaya Chaitanya, when he heard that, he roared, that's a lie. My guru never spoke to me of such things. You must behave like a cowherd boy. Don't even think of accepting the mood of a gopi. So Syamananda Pandit, he replied very quietly, please forgive me. I cannot do that. And that answer so enraged Hridaya Chaitanya that he picked up a stick and he struck his disciple 3 times on the back. And then the assembled devotees, they asked Hridaya Chaitanya to stop. But Syamananda spoke up and he said, quote, please do not try to correct my spiritual master. I'm very happy that he has beat me in this way. Today my spiritual master has acknowledged that I am his own property, and therefore his merciful chastisement is like cooling sandalwood paste that soothes my body and my mind. So the devotees were stunned by Syamananda's words and his humble demeanor. And it's mentioned that they glorified him throughout the day and the rest of the night. It said even as they bathed, they cooked, they ate, and they visited the groves and gardens around Shanket. They glorified him for this his humility and his mood of surrender to his guru. So then that night, as everyone slept beneath the trees in the forest, Lord Chaitanya appeared to Hridaya Chaitanya in a dream. And in the dream, the Lord's body was marked with 3 large welts on his back. And seeing Mahaprabhu's injured body and blood-stained clothes, Hridaya Chaitanya became very frightened. And he said, "Oh Lord, what's happened to you? What is the explanation for this terrible sight?" And Mahaprabhu replied, "This is all you're doing. You beat my Syamananda, who is like my second self. So naturally, all the injuries that you inflicted upon him have come upon me." So Hridaya Chaitanya fell at the Lord's lotus feet, and he sobbed. "I'm lost," he said. "No one can save me from the hell that awaits me. O Lord, I had no understanding how dear Syamananda is to you. I've committed an unforgivable offense to a great soul, and thus I have also offended you. Since there is no forgiveness for such a sin, I shall commit suicide now by entering into fire." But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very pleased with Hridaya Chaitanya's remorse. So he advised him, he said, "No, don't do that. All you have to do to rectify this error is sponsor 12 very glorious Vaishnava festivals for the pleasure of my devotees." So the next morning when Hridaya Chaitanya awoke, he called Syamananda and the other devotees and publicly narrated every detail of this dream, including the Lord's order to hold 12 Vaishnava festivals. Then Hridaya Chaitanya, he turned to Syamananda, his disciple, and he said, quote, "I punished you unjustly, but because you did not take offense, you have saved your guru from sinful reactions and delivered him from hell." And placing Syamananda on his lap, he said, "My dear Syamananda, from this day on, you are not my servant, but you are my very life." And then Syamananda started crying tears, and he fell down at the feet of his guru, and he grabbed them very tightly to his chest while all the devotees chanted, "Hari, Hari, Hari." So later, it's mentioned that arrangements were made for these 12 festivals ordered by Mahaprabhu, in which the devotees chanted and danced in great happiness and enjoyed opulent feasts. So one important point is that we should not think ill of Hridaya Chaitanya as the spiritual master of Syamananda Pandit, because this is all lila, meant to increase loving attachments. There's many instructions to be gained from it, but from a deep point of view, a deep understanding, it's just churning the ocean of the nectar of devotion and making all these devotees more attached to each other and more attached to Radha and Krishna. Let us remember that Lord Chaitanya appeared in that dream to Rita Chaitanya, and they had a full-on conversation. And Mahaprabhu gave him instructions, so he's certainly a very elevated devotee. But an amazing pastime. And also we should also note the deep faith that the Guru Nishta that Syamananda had in his spiritual master. So many things we could learn from these pastimes. So after the observance of these 12 festivals, which Hridaya Chaitanya had organized and watched over and made sure all the devotees were happy and the opulent prasadam was served and their deep loving sentiments towards him. After all of that, Syamananda again became absorbed in service to Shyamasundar, his deity. But soon after that, another incredible incident happened. And that is that one night, Syamasundar, the deity of Syamananda Pandit, appeared to Syamananda Pandit in a dream. And the deity said to him, "My dear Syamananda, my Radharani has appeared as a self-manifested deity in the treasury of the palace of the king of Bharatpur." Bharatpur is not far from Vrindavan. Please go and get her and unite us in marriage. His deity is appearing to him in a dream and telling him that a self-manifested form of Radha has appeared in the palace of the king of Bharatpur. So go get her and then have a ceremony where we're married. And that very same night, Srimati Radharani appeared in a dream to the king of Bharatpur and said, "My dear king, my Syamasundar has recently manifested as a deity in a grove in Vrindavan to my very dear devotee, Syamananda. Please arrange my marriage with him, with that deity of Syamasundar." So the next day, the king and Syamananda Pandit, they met each other. And on the day of Vasant Panchami in the year 1580, the king of Bharatpur, he came to Vrindavan with his queen and his ministers and a large group of dignitaries, and a marriage of that deity of Radharani and that deity of Shyamasundar took place as a great celebration, as per the desire of the deities. And after the marriage, the king built the present Radha Shyamasundar temple in Vrindavan. The king of Bharatpur, he built that temple. And at the same time, in honor of the marriage, he gave the village of Chatikara for the service of the deities. And present at that marriage was the king of Jaipur. Can you imagine? So many dignitaries, elevated souls, kings, queens, sadhus, they're coming to observe a marriage between two deities. How elevated is this culture that we follow? So elevated. They're all there, watching the ceremony of the two deities getting married. This is the highest culture. Oh my Lord, you are not a statue, you are directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. And realizing that, they participate in these very auspicious performances. Now the king of Jaipur, he was also in attendance, and when he heard that the king of Bharatpur had given the whole village of Chatikara for the service of the deity, a place to grow fruits and vegetables, and the inhabitants of that village to serve the deities, the king of Jaipur, he gave one of his villages called Shamali. There was a village called Shamali, and he gave that for the service of the Radha Shyamasundar temple. Now, regarding Regarding Radha and Krishna being married, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we see this as, you could say, Keli Leela. This is a playful pastime, not an actual marriage. It's described in Shastra that at another time, 5,000 years ago actually, Radha and Krishna, as small children, were walking with their friends together in Bandiravan. It's described in Shastra. They're walking together with their friends in Bandiravan. And as they stopped to rest under a big banyan tree, there they manifested their youthful forms by their mystic potency. And Lord Brahma was called to be the priest for a wedding. And he performed that marriage ceremony between this youthful couple with all the 33 million demigods in attendance. And during that wedding ceremony, there's a lot of details, but we don't have time now. During that wedding ceremony, Radharani's sari was tied to Krishna's dhoti in a knot, as is the custom in Vedic weddings. But when the ceremony was over and the guests had left, the knot was untied, and Radha and Krishna assumed, again, their very young childhood forms. And everyone forgot about the playful pastime and continued on their way. So like that, the Parakya Bhav, or the mood of unwedded love of Radha and Krishna, is the principal mood in Vrindavan. So Radha and Krishna don't ever get married because no restrictions there, whereas there's the unwedded love of the gopis for Krishna. There's so many beautiful past, very intense sentiments of love. So Parakya Bhav reigns supreme in Braj. So the marriages are all kind of in fun. So, as we mentioned before, after some time, Jiva Goswami requested Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasacharya, and Syamananda Pandit to take the original books of the 6 Goswamis to Bengal by ox cart. And as we know, on the way, the books were stolen in a town called Vana Vishnupur. Vana Vishnupur. I want to go there sometime because I heard that after Srinivasacharya recovered those books, and the king of that region became his disciple, as did his queen, and so many people in Vana Vishnupur. The king built so many beautiful temples, Radha Krishna temples, Gaurnitai temples. Actually, at one point, the king and Srinivasacharya, they journeyed to Vrindavan, and they saw how everything was, where all the holy places were, and they made a map, and they brought it back to Vana Vishnupur, and they started recreating Vrindavan, the holy places in Vrindavan, in Vana Vishnupur. So, yeah, I know my good friend Sri Prahlad Prabhu, he went there one time, and he told me it's just amazing, all the various temples there. So the books were stolen there, but they were recovered. And in the meantime, Srinivasacharya, he requested Narottam Das Thakur to go on to deliver the residents of East Bengal, go back to Keturi. And Syamananda, he instructed him to go preach in Orissa, where the great temple of Jagannath Puri is situated. So Syamananda did that. He'd been well trained in the arts of devotional service and the philosophy and the Tola and the school of Jiva Goswami, along with Srinivasa Narottam. So now he was doing his seva. He was traveling and preaching there. And after some time, after a few years actually, he, very successful in his preaching, he returned to Vrindavan. And I was reading that upon his arrival, he was greeted by Jiva Goswami and many other famous devotees as, quote, a returning hero. A returning hero. You can just imagine as he's coming into the Vrindavan, and Jiva Goswami is there, and so many mahants and great devotees, and Syamananda had taken the books on that epic voyage epic journey to Bengal, and he preached throughout Orissa very successfully, and he was coming back They received him as a returning hero. And on that visit, Syamananda spent a couple years in Vrindavan. I think altogether, I read, he spent 15 years in Vrindavan between, his original stay and visits there, 15 years. So during this particular visit, one night, again, his deity, Shyamasundar, appeared to him in a dream and said, "My dear Syamananda, as you've seen, as you know, nowadays in Utkal, means Orissa, so many people are misbehaving and indulging in sinful activities. Go there now, deliver them, and give initiation to my very dear devotee, Rasikananda. And the two of you work together to deliver the people of Utkal, Orissa." So Syamananda woke up and preparations were made, and he left for Utkal, accompanied by a number of disciples. He already had a number of disciples. But as they left Vrindavan, the road back to Orissa went through Agra, which is not very far from Vrindavan. It's about a 45-minute drive. But when they got to Agra, there were different toll stations. You had to pay money as you went to different parts of the country, and there were guards there, and they'd always inquire. So these are sadhus. They don't have any papers, identity papers. Sadhus don't carry their identities, their kuntimala, their tilak, and the fact that their lips are vibrating the holy names. So there were some soldiers there, Muslim soldiers, and they imprisoned Syamananda and his those who were accompanying him. They threw him in prison. We heard rumors that there's thieves in this area. They said, "You don't have any documents," so they suspected them of being thieves. However, that night, Lord Nrsingadev appeared in a dream to the Muslim officer in charge of that entire area of Agra. Nrsingadev appeared to him, and he ordered him to release Syamananda and his disciples. So the frightened, officer immediately woke up, ran to the jail, released them. And not only that, seeing the effulgent form of Syamananda, he could see that he was a very elevated personality, shining like the sun. He fell at his feet and requested to become his follower. He surrendered to Syamananda Pandit. And it's actually written that he later became a great devotee and helped spread Krishna consciousness in that region. The chief of police. How could he not? He had darshan of one of our greatest acharyas, and Lord Nrsingadev appeared to him in a dream. We couldn't expect less. So such is the power of a devotee like Syamananda, or our Srila Prabhupada. Such is the power of such very deep rasic devotees. But how do they spend their time? Traveling, preaching, spreading the word. In their village, or in their town, in their city, or by going to distant places. This is a Vaishnava. Through his sadhan bhakti, he cultivates gradually, purification and love awakens, and then he shares. This is a Vaishnava. And just see the power of Syamananda. He delivered that chief of police, Muslim chief of police. And Prabhupada writes, Prabhupada writes in a purport, Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, verse 24, he writes, quote, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has sung that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya are so powerful that each one of them can deliver a universe. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has sung that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya are so powerful that each one of them can deliver a universe. And another time Prabhupada said, and I read it in a conversation he was having with disciples, he said, Lord Brahma can create a universe, but a pure devotee can deliver the universe. So who was, Syamananda Pandit? Who were all those associates of Lord Chaitanya? And who is our Srila Prabhupada, who's been entrusted with that mission to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world? I keep saying it, we're so blessed. Hare Krishna. So when Syamananda and his team eventually made it to Utkal, to Orissa, there Syamananda searched out and found Rasikananda. We could probably give a whole class on Rasikananda. He's such an amazing, like father, like son, like father, like son, like father, like son, like father, like son. This is the disciplic succession. So Rasikananda is an amazing devotee. And Syamananda initiated him. And I was reading, he also gave initiation to his wife, who was named Ichadevi, but he changed her name to Shamdasi. And it's also stated that he initiated Rasikananda's little daughter. It's mentioned she's a little daughter, Devaki. In those days it was not uncommon that boys and girls were initiated very young, like 12 years of age. And some of our devotees are young children also in our Mayapur community because they've been brought up in that wonderful spiritual atmosphere and they're so serious about Krishna consciousness. Some 12 and 13, 14-year-olds have also been initiated, I've heard. So he initiated that little daughter, Devaki, and it's written that in time, Syamananda and Rasikananda became very, very close as guru and disciple, spreading the word together. Now one day, while on a preaching tour through Orissa, Rasikananda and Syamananda Pandit, they stayed at the home of one Damodar Pandit, who was a childhood friend of Rasikananda. And during that stay, Rasikananda suggested to his friend that he should also take initiation from Syamananda Pandit. But not knowing that Syamananda Pandit, we're saying Syamananda Pandit because we know that he got the name Syamananda from Radharani, but Jiva Goswami, when he graduated from the school in Vrindavan and began his preaching exploits, he gave the name Syamananda Pandit. So they're interchangeable. So not knowing that Syamananda Pandit, Damodar Pandit replied to Rasikananda, well, I'll only take diksha from him if I see something very special in him. Because he didn't know him. So only if I see something very special will I take initiation from him. So lo and behold, the next morning, after taking his bath and chanting his morning Gayatri, Damodar Pandit walked into Syamananda Pandit's room to see if he required anything. And what did he see? He saw Syamananda Pandit sitting with his eyes closed. The room was fully illuminated by the light emanating from his body as he chanted Hare Krishna on his beads. He just walked in and this whole room's lit up by the effulgence of his body. He's deeply immersed in chanting the holy names. And then suddenly, Damodar Pandit saw a divine image of Vrindavan Dham. The whole room turned into Vrindavan Dham, a vision, not an image, a vision, wherein Krishna was sitting on a throne made of jewels under a wish-fulfilling tree dressed in yellow, and there was a flute on his lips, and he was gently smiling. And there he saw Syamananda Pandit in his gopi form as Kanaka Manjari, offering flowers to Krishna. He said, I only take initiation from if I see something special. He saw Vrindavan by the mercy of Syamananda. He saw Vrindavan, and then there's Krishna, and then there's Syamananda offering flowers to Krishna. So seeing all this, Damodar couldn't check himself. And the vision broke, and there's Syamananda Pandit chanting on his beads. So he ran at his feet and he grabbed those feet and put them to his chest. Please accept me as your disciple. And I found a document online where it's written that in the year 1609, Damodar Pandit, his mother, and his 2 wives took initiation from Syamananda Pandit. So yeah, so while traveling, while touring Orissa, Syamananda Pandit engaged everyone he met in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And he would perform these large harinams. As he traveled, in this way he was gathering many disciples. Many devotees hearing the philosophy from his lotus mouth and perceiving his obvious exalted stage of Krishna consciousness, people immediately gave up whatever sinful activities they were performing, immediately. And agreed to all the rules and regulations, and then he would accept them. He was moving quickly, and he had a mission, just like our Srila Prabhupada. He was also moving quickly on a mission. He was initiating devotees here, there, and everywhere. Sometimes it was questionable. Sometimes people had only been to the temple like a week in the very beginning, 26 2nd Avenue. They'd only been there a little while, but Prabhupada had a mission. And he took the risk sometimes to initiate devotees quickly. Now we have a system in place where, one is required to wait some time, but this was a historic time, and these are great devotees, and these people, seeing them, surrendered their hearts immediately. So he was traveling with a retinue, you could say, a large group of devotees. So at one point, they came to a particular town, and they had a huge harinam in the marketplace, hundreds of devotees. And it's described that there was one very devout Muslim ruler of that region. And when he heard about this chanting of Hare Krishna and, devotees and converting people to Krishna consciousness, this Muslim ruler, his name was Sher Khan. He lived in a palace, actually, not far from that particular town where Syamananda Pandit was having this roaring kirtan. Hearing about this, he became furious. And the next day, he took a large group of armed soldiers to the marketplace, where Syamananda was again having a roaring kirtan, massive kirtan. And he ordered his soldiers to attack the Harinam party. And they did. They were beating the devotees, and they were smashing the mridangas and tearing the kartals from their hands. And before they could do any more damage, Syamananda called out, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham. And as soon as he did that, something amazing happened. It's described that Syamananda's chanting was like Prahlad Maharaj's chanting as he was tortured by his father, or Haridas Thakur's chanting as he was whipped in the marketplaces. That quality of chanting. So suddenly, Sher Khan and all his soldiers, they started vomiting blood. Blood was pouring from their mouth, vomiting blood. Not only that, but their hair and their beards, they caught on fire. And the flames quickly spread to their clothes, and it forced this entire little army that he brought there to jump in a nearby lake and then humiliated. Sher Khan and his men retreated to his palace, where it's described that the king sat dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what had happened. This devotees chanting Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, we're vomiting blood, and our beards and hair catch on fire, and to jump in the lake, we were humiliated. So that night, it's written that as Sher Khan slept, Allah appeared to the king in his dream, and he angrily slapped him And Allah told the king that his name, Allah, Allah Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Allah, that his name and the name of Krishna are the same. And he said, my name, Allah, is also the same as the name of the Juga Avatar, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is my most confidential form. This is very deep. Yes. So the following day, the king, very humbly, he came alone to see Syamananda. They went out again. The third day in that village, even after all that had happened. So the king, the Muslim king, he went there. And he bowed down, he fell at the feet of Syamananda, grabbed his feet, took them to his heart, and he begged forgiveness. Not only that, he'd been so purified by what Allah had instructed him and the knowledge that he received, the deep vision that he had. He requested Syamananda Pandit to initiate him as his disciple. And that's exactly what Syamananda Pandit did. Within 3 days, this Muslim ruler became a Vaishnava. Sher Khan received the spiritual name Chaitanya Das, servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and later became a very prominent disciple of Syamananda Pandit. Wow. It's so nectar, isn't it, to hear the Vrindavan Leela of Radha and Krishna and the gopis and the cowherd boys, and, Prem Sarovara or Radha Kund or Sanket. And then to also hear these pastimes of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Radhe Krishna Nayanga. Radha and Krishna combined in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's the Yuga avatar, who's distributing this deeper understanding of love of God in the form of Braj Bhakti through his disciples like Syamananda Pandit, who are traveling in these areas of ruffians and political oppression and, at the same time giving out this divine love. The two are interdependent of each other. Gaur Leela and Radhesham Leela. And therefore I've mentioned many times how devotees, they go from Mayapur to Vrindavan, back to Mayapur. Our great acharyas are living in both places to imbibe these moods. Because as we've mentioned before, really to enter into Vrindavan Dham, we need the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nitai Gaur. So I'm actually thinking that in maybe a month and a half or 2 months from now, I might move to Mayapur, because we've discussed a lot of Braj Leela, a lot. We've been discussing for almost 1 year now, several times a week. So I'm thinking at one point to go to Mayapur, and then we'll, with the help of the Mayapur Vasis there, all the wonderful devotees, the scholars, and the wonderful devotees in our community there, we can discuss Gaur Leela. And when that's finished, we'll come back and we'll do more Braj Leela. Then we'll go back and do more Gaur. And this way we'll remain fixed in Krishna consciousness. So Sher Khan became Chaitanya Das. What more do we need to hear? That it is possible to deliver the people of this age by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, while chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's see. Another pastime, another Gaur Leela pastime. I read on another occasion that while on a preaching tour, Syamananda Pandit was walking with his disciples on the bank of the river called Suvarna Reka. I couldn't put exactly where it was, but they're walking on the bank of a river called Suvarna Reka one day, when a Mayavadi sannyasi was passing by, and seeing Syamananda Pandit, he said, "You're a hypocrite Vaishnava." You're a hypocrite, Vaishnava. Syamananda, he remained very calm, and he kept walking a few meters, and suddenly everyone noticed on the bank of that Suvarnareka river a very large and very ferocious crocodile lying there with its mouth open. You don't go near a ferocious crocodile. But what did Syamananda Pandit do? He called out, "O crocodile, due to some sinful activities in your previous birth, you've become a reptile. You've become a crocodile. Now you should give up your violent nature. Lord Sri Krishna shall surely be merciful to you." Now as soon as he said, "Lord Krishna will surely be merciful to you," the crocodile turned and walked over and stunned everyone by falling submissively at the feet of Syamananda Pandit. Lord Krishna will be merciful. How do we receive Krishna's mercy? Through his representatives, the Vaishnavas. So it happened. The crocodile. Krishna inspired the crocodile to move to Syamananda Pandit, fall at his feet, surrender. And then, to the amazement of everyone, Syamananda Pandit initiated the crocodile into the chanting of the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. He initiated him. And then the crocodile bowed down, as much as crocodiles can do, bowed down to Syamananda Pandit, turned and slowly entered to the deep, back into the deep waters of the river. I was also reading, I can't remember where it was, that when Syamananda Pandit was in Vrindavan, he would sometimes initiate the animals there, the deer, the birds, and chipmunks. I read that. He'd make him, and they would roar with the Maha Mantra afterwards. Incredible, these devotees. And we're their followers. And through Guru Parampara, we're getting their mercy. So, seeing this with his own eyes, the Mayavadi sannyasi, because this happened practically at the same time, seeing this with his own eyes, the Mayavadi sannyasi, he felt great remorse. Oh, I've committed a great offense. I've offended this Vaishnava, this just not any Vaishnava, this Syamananda Pandit. And he ran, and he grabbed the feet of Syamananda Pandit. He held them to his heart, and he begged for forgiveness. And then after begging for forgiveness, he asked to be his disciple. The change happens very quickly, it appears, in those days, in the presence of such a soul. So seeing this complete change of heart, Syamananda initiated him into the chanting of the holy names and gave him the name Shankara Das. Shankara. Shankara Das. It's almost inconceivable to see at what length Vaishnavas will go to deliver people. Not only people, but living entities. Haridas Thakur referred to, when Mahaprabhu asked, how will the immovable living entities be delivered? Like, he was referring to plants and trees, and see the concern, the broad-mindedness of the Lord and his devotees. How will they be? Haridas Thakur said, by the loud chanting of the holy names, my Lord. And we hear how Shivananda Sen had a dog, and he was a dog, but they sent an airplane from Goloka to put the dog in the plane and took him home. We're part of the most amazing movement, the most amazing sampradaya, we're so blessed. It makes your hair stand on end. It makes you want to get back out on Sankirtan. And many devotees are on Sankirtan through the internet, of course. So it's amazing. You think of it in one sense, he delivered a crocodile and a Mayavadi. A crocodile and a Mayavadi. That they would give their mercy to such persons. And not only give it, but change them. It's not so surprising, I guess you could say, because in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 1532, Prabhupada writes in the purport, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His devotees who come to this world are executing a mission. And therefore sometimes they act in a way that is very difficult to understand. It is said therefore, Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Bigjesha Na Bujaya. Even if one is a very learned and intelligent scholar, he cannot understand the activities of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava accepts anything favorable for executing his mission. So sometimes difficult to say, he delivered a crocodile? No. Now in that same tour, Syamananda requested Rasikananda to organize a festival in the city of Gopi Ballabhpur. He said, do it in such a way, Rasikananda, that the inhabitants of the whole universe become astonished witnessing that festival. That everyone in the universe will be astonished upon seeing the festival that you're going to organize. I keep reading about festivals, these devotees are, Tha Mahaprabhu does so many festivals, so. Do it in such a way the whole universe will be astonished. So I discovered that festival was organized and held in the year 1621, that particular festival. Took a little research. That very festival ordered by Syamananda Pandit for Rasikananda, it was held in 1621. And it's written that innumerable Vaishnavas from Vrindavan, from Puri, from all over Orissa, from Bengal, they all came. Even from Ayodhya and Dwarka they came. And during that Maha Mahotsava, Rasikananda arranged to bathe the feet of 100,000 Vaishnavas, including all the most exalted pure devotees of our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition living at that time. And the water was put in containers and sealed. And that water is still there in airtight containers in a temple in Gopi Ballabhpur. As a small side note, that by the unfathomable mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I had the opportunity to drink a full cup of that water one time. It's probably the only reason I'm still here. I got to drink a cup of that water that had washed the feet of 100,000 Vaishnavas at that time, and all the great Mahants at that time. Some very special mercy. Hare Krishna. So, the pastimes of Syamananda Pandit, you could say, are far too numerous to include just in two classes, but I've tried my best to share some of those pastimes with you so we can appreciate what a great Vaishnavacharya he was, and we can aspire to be like him. Charya means one who sets the example. So we can hope one day to go deeper, and we can hope to one day become empowered to help these great acharyas spread the holy name to every town and village. So, in 1623, in the month of Jyeshta, in a town called Nrsimhapur, presently I believe that's Kanpur, Syamananda Pandit, he fell seriously ill, and he called for all the devotees present, near and far, to come, and he said to them, please do not make any efforts for my recovery. I have received a call from Lord Sri Krishna to leave this world. I've received a call from Lord Sri Krishna to leave this world, so I will soon take your leave. And my final request to all of you is, please perform Harinam Kirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna, day and night throughout your lives. Now, when a great Acharya gives instructions, it's not just meant for one or two or just his disciples. Those instructions are meant for all the Vaishnava community, past, present, and future. So his final request was, perform kirtan, chant Hare Krishna day and night throughout your lives, as much as possible. Then on the 5th day of the bright fortnight in the month of Jyeshta, in that year, in the midst of a loud kirtan by hundreds of devotees, 1623, Syamananda Pandit concluded his manifest pastimes in this world, and he departed. And witnessing the glorious departure of his spiritual master, Rasikananda Prabhu, he wept bitterly and described he fell unconscious 3 times. And news of the disappearance of Syamananda Pandit spread very quickly through the Vaishnava communities, Vrindavan, Navadvip, Puri. And kings and queens and the rich and the poor, and men and women and children, they all came to Nrsimhapur to mourn his disappearance. And amongst the leaders, it was unanimously decided that 2 samadhis for Syamananda Pandit would be established. One in Nrsimhapur and the other in Vrindavan, which is near that samadhi is very near the Radha, it's part of the Radha Shyamasundar temple. Actually, it's next to the same spot that he had found Srimati Radharani's anklet and received the deity of Shyamasundar from her. Hare Krishna. This brings us to a conclusion, and I would like to conclude with a beautiful verse glorifying Syamananda Pandit, again by my dear friend Hari Parshad Prabhu from Mumbai, and also some words from an anonymous poet from days gone by. So the beautiful verse that Hari Parshad, our devotee scholar, has written in glorification of Syamananda Pandit is as follows: Hridayananda Sach Chishyam Jiva Goswami Sevakam Radha Dator Dva Panduram Shri Syamananda Prabhum Bhaje. Quote, I worship Sri Syamananda Prabhu, who is the sincere disciple of Hridayananda Prabhu, who is the servant of Srila Jiva Goswami, and who is the personality bestowed with an Udva Pundar Tilak by Srimati Radha herself. I'll recite it again. I worship Sri Syamananda Prabhu, who is the sincere disciple of Hridayananda Prabhu, who is the servant of Srila Jiva Goswami, and who is the personality bestowed with an Urdhva Pundar Tilak by Sri Radha herself. So beautiful. And the Vaishnava poet, it's actually, the poem is said, it's written by, well, not a poem, but the phrase is written by a Vaishnava, anonymous Vaishnava poet of days gone by. Such a wonderful ending to hearing the glorification of Syamananda Pandit. He's addressing him, Syamananda Pandit. O Kanaka Manjari, O Syamananda Pandit, we bid you farewell. While absorbed in the eternal worship of Shri Shri Radha Shyamasundar in the groves of Vrindavan, please keep showering the nectar of your merciful glance on the people afflicted by the suffering in this terrible age of Kali Yuga. May that glance guide them in every step on their journey home to the eternal world of song and dance. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll, of course, we'll be back in a few days with another lecture. We'll decide who, and we'll do our research, service all of you. So, Syamananda Pandit ki, Srila Jiva Goswami ki, Hridaya Chaitanya ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Goloka Vrindavan Dham ki, back home, back to Godhead ki, Gaur Premanandi, Mayapur Dham ki, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Shyam.